like
The actual process.
the plausible, well, the possibilities of there being detrimental effects to the environment and stuff like
Right.
that.
So from the hydraulic fracturing itself, if we imagine, get all my props here. This is a good well here. There's our well. Imagine it goes through here.
Okay.
So we're going higher and higher. We're actually going to go 6,000 feet down before we even start turning.
Okay.
So we're going to go from the surface 6,000 feet until we hit this shell. We'll turn and go into this. Well, it's probably more like this. That's exactly what we got. Go through a coal, go through a shell, a sandstone, another sandstone, go through a shell, come through this Marcellus shell. It's 6,000 feet down. And what they'll do is they'll drill that well, they'll cement it in place. They'll have multiple strings of cement. So they'll cement in something to protect the fresh water on the surface. They'll have another casing, which they'll call an intermediate casing to a certain depth. So they'll have a surface casing, maybe 500 feet of surface casing. Another casing that's probably 2,000 feet of an intermediate casing. Then they'll have what they call the production string, which is also cemented back to the surface. So 3 strings of cement with casing, which is basically a metal material that will be protecting the geologic formations from the wellbore itself. And then this would turn and come horizontally, and they would do the hydraulic fracturing at 6,000 to 8,000 feet deep in a lot of these big wells, the ones you're probably referring to. And in that case, I think that the idea here is they don't want to lose any pressure back into the wellbore. So if they did, they wouldn't be able to break the rock. So they need extreme amounts of pressure, 3, 4, 5,000 psi of pressure to break this rock down here, maybe more depending on the depth. And if there was any connection back to the actual wellbore, they wouldn't be able to do that. So they actually set packers, and they do what they call baffles and ball systems, where they can basically hydraulically fracture different zones. So they'll probably have 21 different zones that they'll be fracturing in these wells that could be up to 2 miles long underground. And in that case, they run what they call microseismic surveys, where they're listening and pinpointing by multiple, if they have 4 or more, in this case they'll probably have 20 or 30 geophones, either down other wells or on the surface, listening to where the fractures occur. And most of those fractures actually occur within that shell.
Okay.
So if you're thinking environmentally, could you leak from 6,000 feet back to the surface, is unlikely, because you have probably another 10 shell layers that are impermeable that are stacked on top of each other that would not allow that. If you have any sort of fault systems, there could be a possibility.
Okay.
So they do a lot of seismic work ahead of time to make sure they're not opening up any sort of fault systems that may run to the surface. That would be one of the issues. I think the main issue, so I think hydraulic fracturing itself at 6,000 feet doesn't have any detrimental effect on the environment. What could now is this wellbore that I'm talking to you that has multiple strings of casing of cement that's, if there was some sort of leak in the casing and then through the cement, or you could have some sort of a well blowout where that well would, whatever high pressure fluids you were putting in there, could possibly blow out into the formations up here. So it's not hydraulically fracturing at 6,000 feet that's the problem. It's the integrity of the wellbore that I think is more of an issue. So they run cement bond logs and pressure test these things to make sure that they don't have that issue. But we have seen a few cases where we